be doing a real cute penguin painting, so I went online and I looked at a bunch of clip art of different penguins to see which one I liked the best, and I sort of came up with like a hybrid penguin from all of the penguins that I like the best. And so this one's kind of doing like a little dance. It's 1 foot down, 1 foot up in the air, and he's holding something which I think would be real cute, which if you did like a heart or something, or a snowflake in his hand, but I gave him a star. But you know, he's just kind of like holding something up and marveling at it. And in the background I thought I would do little snowflakes with some little flurries going around them, maybe use a paint marker to do the snowflake itself, and in the background I've got like a little fuzzy white circle kind of glowing around it. I have a canvas that is a stretch canvas that I actually painted over an old design of a turtle, so maybe if you hold it up to the light you can still kind of see the turtle shining through. And then I just went over the white paint with a little bit of this like a powdered blue color, and just give it a nice little cold looking background. So I'm going to be doing graphite to transfer our hybrid penguin on our canvas. So I have this piece of very used graphite, which comes in a big sheet, and I just cut it into 4s. And actually when you cut it into 4s, it fits perfectly on a 9x12 canvas, which is what this is. So I'm just going to flip it over with the dark side down on the canvas, and I'm going to just tape it in place so it doesn't wiggle around like that. I have a few pieces of tape just holding down the corners, and then you're going to lay your picture of the penguin, which I just drew him, but you could easily print something off the computer so you have a nice neat image that you don't have to draw. Since I was doing a combination of a few images that I liked, I had to draw this one myself, and so I just do it in pencil first, go over with Sharpie, and then, you know, make copies as necessary. So I will take, instead of using a pencil to sort of trace over the lines, I like to use something that's not going to make marks. So what you want to do is press hard over all the lines, and you're going to be transferring this stuff, this black stuff, off the back of the graphite onto your canvas. So we're making a copy of this penguin on our canvas. And so you may want to tape your paper down so it doesn't wiggle, but if you can just hold it down with one hand while you're tracing hard over all of the other areas. I usually say press hard like you're coloring with a crayon. You know, you don't want to color lightly. If with a crayon you want to press pretty hard. So that's the kind of pressure we want to use with this. So I just go over the whole thing, and then we'll lift it up and see if we got him. There we go. Just make sure he's on there and he looks good. So there's our penguin friend. And then save your graphite, because obviously I've used this one many times, and you can too. You can just reuse your graphite over and over. Really, the only time I ever get rid of graphite, because this black stuff on there, there's always some area that can transfer onto your canvas, even if you've used some of the other areas that have been scribbled on. There's always enough to get your image on there, even if it's a little light. But the only time I ever get rid of graphite is if I've ripped it accidentally while trying to pull off the tape. So I do that very carefully. But anyway, there he is on our canvas. So we can start getting some colors and get this guy filled in. Some colors ready on my palette, and I'm just picking out a brush that I might want to use to fill in most of my penguin. So I'm thinking about a small brush like that. I might need a fuzzy brush later, so maybe use something like this later to make him look a little fluffy and soft. And maybe one of these right here, something like that. Okay, so we're going to get the white and the gray part on him. Remember I said I wasn't going to do him black. I wanted to look a little softer, look a little more, I don't know, fuzzy maybe, like a baby. So I'm not going to do him with the black color. I'm going to do him with the dark gray. And so right now I'm just going to come and do all the areas that need to be white. So I'm just going to use my soft brush and kind of go over his eyes a little bit. I'm not going to see those right now, but I can add them in later. The eyes are really easy. It's just a circle. So I'm just going to sort of trace around that area. And I know that if I go outside the line, I'm going to be putting gray in the other area that crisscrosses over it. So that's going to cover up any area where I went outside the line. And you may need a couple of coats depending on what color your canvas is in the background. And since this is a nice light blue, I may not need another coat, but just in case, you can be prepared to maybe let it dry, or if you have a dryer, you know, a heat tool that you can use to speed it up, go ahead and blow this dry and do a second coat of white after you've done all the areas that need to be white. All right, so I got his belly done in white. I have his eyes where they need to be in white, and I'm going to do this little ball on top of his hat. And I think I'm going to do his hat with purple. I kind of pulled out some different colors that I want to use together. So I have these 3, and I might do something with those when I go to do his hat. So I haven't really decided yet. But let's get all of our white done. Let's let it dry. Let's do a second coat on it. And we can also take our white brush while we have it with some white paint on it. And we can get some water on our brush, just kind of dunk it in the water. I have my water cup here that hasn't been muddied up yet because I haven't washed anything. So I'm just getting some water on the brush and tapping it off. Okay, so right now I just have a brush that had white paint on it, and now it has some water. And I'm just watering it down, so I'm just adding some water here into one of the empty wells on my palette, okay? And what we're gonna do is, while we have white on our brush, don't let it drip, so get all the extra off. This is a technique I use quite a bit. Whenever I want it to look like something's glowing, and you can do this with white, if it's like a white light or something that you want to glow, in this case it's going to be my snowflakes, I just want to highlight them a little bit, or you could do it with yellow. So you could take yellow paint and water it down. So all I have is watery white paint here, and wherever I want there to be a snowflake later, I'm just going to sort of go like this and just get some very light white paint spots. And you could do them different sizes. There can be some small ones, so wherever you want there to be a snowflake around the sky. And there can be some bigger ones too, and that will be a bigger snowflake, but we do it now so that way it has time to dry. And we're going to do them with a paint marker, so you definitely don't want to be using a nice paint marker on top of wet paint, because that's a really good way to ruin it. So now what I'm doing is going around the major gray areas with the gray paint and just sort of filling in the color, and almost like a coloring book style. I'm just filling it in. I'm not doing any shading or anything else. I'm just coloring it in, plain color in the space. And so later on, that's where the shading is going to come in later. But right now, we just kind of need this shape in there so that we know what we're doing. And I also got a little bit of black in the palette right there, because in the areas here where there's going to be gray on gray, where his little arms are reaching across his belly, I want you to be able to tell that there's a difference there. It's not just all one color or just a big blob. I want to be able to see the definition there where he's got a little bit of a shadow maybe in the area where his hands are reaching across his belly. So that's why we're going to use a little bit of black later on. We're going to use kind of a rough brush, and we're just going to get that, kind of stamp it in there, kind of spounce it in the area there, and make a little fuzzy look too along the way. So all I've really done here is just take a little mixture of the white and then some of the yellows, just kind of dabbed right in the center of all those yellows, and then dip my brush in the yellow, or the white there, just to get sort of a softer looking yellow color to do a base coat on all the areas that need to be orange. So on the beak, on the feet, and then this way I'm going to be able to blow it dry, and then I've got my background. Now I can kind of come in with some of the darker yellow color and go around the edges, you know, of his feet, maybe where the shadow is on the bottom here on this one, and then in that little crease there where his flipper looks like it's bending. So I can blow this dry, and then I can come over it a little easier without seeing a sort of greenish look because of the blue background. All right, and now we can see that if we go over now with this nice bright yellow color, it just looks a lot better than having to see that color in the background. You always kind of want to be mindful of what colors you're combining, what colors you're going over, and just to make sure you're combining colors that are going to look right together, and also that, you know, just going to complement each other well, but also something that's going to mix well over what you're working with. So if you need to do that base of white in the background, or whatever you need to do to make sure your colors look nice, you'll definitely want to do that. There. So I'm using the same brush again, because this is a kind of a nice flat brush. It's got that nice crisp edge to it. It doesn't look like it's been beat up yet by any of the kids. And so I'm able to just sort of, using the flat edge, just kind of chisel along those edges there and come in with a nice clean line. Maybe get a little bit of orange on my brush too at the same time, but brush off the extra. You don't want a whole bunch of extra paint on there. That will take a long time to dry and not really blend very well. So when you're blending, you don't want to have a whole lot of paint on your brush. You want to make sure the paint you're blending into is still slightly wet, but not globby, just slightly wet. And also you want to make sure that you don't have a whole bunch of paint you're adding to the canvas. So you want to tap it all off. You're almost working with a almost dry brush. So there we go, just kind of pulling some of this up onto the foot. And then going around the edge a little bit too, because I always think that adds to the, you know, the realistic aspect of it. Not that this looks realistic, a dancing penguin, you know, holding something in his hand, but you know what I mean. We're going to come in now with some purple on the hat. And so I think I'm going to do all of this area with this color purple, so the top part of that. And then I think for the bottom part of the hat, I might make it a lighter color, maybe with the same purple, or maybe with this other one that's kind of a more neon purple. I like that color together with the other one a lot, so I probably want to use both of those. So I do need a background, so before I go and just start tapping along with my fluffy brush, I'm going to use the same fluffy brush to kind of do a rough little outline here and just kind of fill in the space. So that way when I go to make it fluffy, I'm only going to focus on the outline, the edge part. I'm not going to look too much to the center of it. So I'm just kind of going along, filling in the space so you don't see the graphite lines anymore. And then with this same stuff on your brush, I'm just going to sort of wipe some of it off on the paper on the table here so that my brush is kind of dry but also still dirty. And then kind of beat it up a little bit by just banging it on the table. And then right around the edge, I'm just going to tap along. I haven't added any new paint. I'm just tapping along here to get some little fuzzy look on the edge, just like that. If you feel like you're getting too much on there and it's looking too fuzzy, then just tap off on the table again, kind of rub it on the table, and then come along and do it again. So I need a little bit right along here. I don't even need to add paint because I have enough. There we go. And it just softens the line. So I'm kind of taking away that defined line that was there between the lighter color and the darker color, while also making it just give it some texture. You know, it looks like it's fuzzy. It looks like you can touch it. You can reach out and feel that softness of his little hat. Do another coat here on the dark purple that's up on top of the hat, the top half of it, but I'm not going to get too close to that area where I, you know, tapped on my little fuzzy part there. So I'm going to leave that alone and just kind of come along on the top here and do that. But while this paint is still wet, I'm going to dip into this dark blue that I have here. So this area right here. And then just kind of come along the edge and get a little bit of shadow with the blue. Okay, so there. Brush off my extra paint. Come along here and blend it up, just soften that line. It's super easy to do, but you have to remember that you have to get all that excess paint off your brush. You can't just keep on adding paint to it and wonder, why is it not blending? What am I doing wrong? You can't have that much paint on there. So if I want there to be a little crease in the hat right here, like a little something there, I could do that. I can soften it up after. You saw me kind of go over here, brush and paint onto the paper, just to get it off the brush. And there we go, a nice soft little line. I kind of leave the darkest part of the line, but I add a little bit, you know, I kind of like take away by just brushing along with my nice dry brush. I'm gonna do the same thing over here, and I'm gonna kind of create a little crease in the hat right there. And then nice sharp line over there. Brush off my extra paint, soften your line because your purple is still wet. Now if it wasn't, if it had dried, just add some more purple to your brush, but still brush off the extra. Wipe it on some paper. So I just took that same purple on a rough brush and tapped a little bit up here so he has a matching pom-pom at the top of his hat. I know he doesn't have eyes yet, but they're coming, I promise. I decided to do that little star in his hand. I'm going to do it with the pink, so I'm going to do that now because the next thing I want to do is, and I'm just using my tiny brush here, use one of your really good ones and go slow, just take your time, because the next thing I want to do is kind of go around the edges, the outline of all of our gray, and using kind of a rough but also with, you know, stiff bristles but also a little bit beat up brush, I'm going to go along and just soften it up a little bit, make some fuzzy areas there. So now I'm going to, right along the edge here, I'm going to, his whole outline here, his whole body, I want it to be nice and fluffy. So I'm going to get some gray on this old beat up brush here, with nice stiff bristles. And then I'm going to maybe kind of brush it off on the table. So I have gray on my brush, but just a little bit. It's pretty dry, so it's not putting a whole lot on my hand. And I'm just going to go along the edge and just kind of tap along the edge. It's the same color. We didn't water it down. We're just getting a little bit of a fuzzy look here on the side of his face. Okay. And just kind of dig it in. Don't tap so lightly that it's making a pattern either. You don't want to sort of tap in a pattern. You just kind of want to dig in and just tap away. Get more paint as you need it. But you don't want this to look like, you know, you're putting them in a purposeful spot. You just sort of want it to look like he's just soft and fuzzy, and this is the outline we're seeing. We can't see the fuzz in the other parts here because, you know, it would be facing us, and it's not along an area that's contrasting with the color of his fur. So we can only really do it on the edge. There you go. So now I'm just going along and doing his eyes here with the same technique. And what I was talking about before when I say don't stamp it in sort of a pattern, well, if anybody's ever tried, if you ever tried that Donna Dewberry one-stroke technique, you know, she had a really good brush that she would sell, you know, made by Plaid, with the green handle, all those nice dark green handle brushes, and I really liked all the brushes. I wish they still sold them. You can kind of find them now online, different places sell them, maybe used or whatever, or maybe you can just go to the company direct and get them. But they were really good brushes. Only thing is, the scruffy brush kind of looked like this. This is not one of the Donna Dewberry brushes. This is something else. But the scruffy brush was kind of shaped like this, and so you can kind of see that you know, it would be like an oval shape with those nice rough bristles. bristles that were kind of short, and they were just kind of very close together. Well, a lot of people would go to do wisteria with this, and wisteria is kind of a cool looking plant to do with a scruffy brush because it looks a lot like it. You know, all you really have to do is get a little bit of the purple and white on your brush at the same time, and then go crazy with it and tap it on wherever you want it, and you can make it look like it's hanging and whatever. It would look really cool. But a lot of people would sort of do it in a pattern and just kind of like putting them in a nice straight neat line, and something like this that's supposed to look fuzzy and soft and wiry is really not supposed to go in a pattern or anything, so it doesn't look as natural when you do it that way. So that was just kind of a non-example that I could remember in my mind. I was just wanting to bring that up. You have to kind of remember where that line was, and if you need to, bring back that picture to remind yourself where the lines were so we can see. Okay, so it goes all the way up to the star, and I'm just tapping along with that same motion because I still want it to look fluffy here. If I was to do a straight line, then he would look like he's fluffy everywhere but on his flippers, and that doesn't really make sense. So there we go. Just in the shadowy part right there, I could have a little more black on my brush, but rubbing it off. And then here as well, just kind of tapping along, soften that up. Not too much. Dip in the gray. Get that nice mixture there. Okay. And that same technique of, you know, kind of cutting in with, just like we did up on the hat here in the blue area, we're just kind of cutting in with some more of the gray color. That is the solid background color, to sort of cut away that area there. If we have a little too much shadow, we want it to be a little more subtle. So we just kind of eat away at it with leaving that small little edge right there. Okay, and I think we need just a little bit on the top, but on the top there, because this is a shadowy area underneath, and the top is going to be more like highlighted because it's reaching near the sun. If he's outside, you know, of course he's outside because it's snowing on him. And so we just need to make sure that we do the opposite of the shadow area on the top. So we're going to go and putting the gray on our brush, of course, still, but we're going to put a little bit of white with it. So you'll get to see what that looks like. And it's just a really easy way to do little highlights and lowlights, and it really just adds to the realistic aspect of your photo. There we go. Okay, I have just a little bit of white on my brush. I'm just tapping along very slightly. Maybe it even looks like he has some snow on him, you know, because he probably would if he's outside. Just tapping along. Bring back that photo if you need to remember where your arm lines are. There you go. And just a little bit so we see these are the tops of his arms. Soften it up a little bit. There, perfect. My brush up. I think we're going to use the same tiny brush too with the black. We're going to give him his eyes. Bring back your picture to remember where your eyes are, okay? He's a little cross-eyed. They're kind of close here in the center, and I think I'll put a little shine in his eye too, so I'll probably use the white and do a little dot of that. Okay, and then I might even outline a little bit of my star using the same brush, but with the white. So as I'm washing this off, preparing a little bit of white for the shine in his eyes, right there and right there. I'm gonna go and do some snowflakes around here with a paint marker. And I'm just going to kind of do them oversized, all different sizes, maybe some tiny ones, and then some bigger ones. And they're just kind of very subtly in the background there. You can kind of barely see them. And I think what I decided to do is just over the snowflake area, I think I'm going to brush on a little bit of glitter glue. So I'm going to keep going around with these snowflakes, okay? And then I'm going to come in with some glitter glue and just kind of go right over them once the paint marker is dry. So I got my Mod Podge here, and I'm just going to, now that I've done all my snowflakes, I'm going to dip in the Mod Podge, and I always use a glossy kind, and I'm just going to sort of make a little circle right over the center of these, just a few at a time so I can brush on my glitter. I always use Glamour Dust here. It's super fine glitter. Can't find it in the stores anymore. I just order it online. And with my Mod Podge drying clear, this glitter looks really cool on there because it goes with anything. It's just sort of an iridescent. It doesn't have any color on its own. It just looks white in the bottle. And I hold it up high and just do this little shake, kind of get just a little bit, let it just fall right into all the glue. Now, they say no two snowflakes are alike. All of mine are alike because I didn't want to think of other ways to do snowflakes, so I did them all the same. But, you know, they still look pretty cool, and it's just in the background. I did some dots here and there to look like snow. But this one was really fun and easy, and he came out pretty darn cute.